What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your battery Par 50 rechargeable Par wash light. So as you can see, it comes with the light itself, a mounting bracket and the hardware to attach the bracket onto the light, a power cable to charge your light, a wireless remote, and a manual that has the DMX guide inside, so you'll want to keep that. So we have many ways we can place our light between different floor positions. We can place them inside our totem stands, and we can even hang them from our truss. So first let's talk about the totem stand placement, because this won't require the included mounting bracket or the hardware. So for this setup, this works best with a totem stand that has a white scrim surrounding it, so that when we place our light inside, it gives it that illuminated effect. So all we have to do is lift up the scrim from the bottom of the totem stand, turn on our light and set it to any mode or color, place it on the bottom of the stand, and then lift the scrim back down. And of course, we can always change the color or mode the light is set to with our wireless remote, DMX controller, etc. So now let's talk about the floor placement for our light. So not all of them need the bracket attached to the light, but let's go over that real quick anyway, so that way we have the option to angle our light into different positions from the floor. So the first thing we can do to attach our bracket is take the screws and the washers here. We're gonna place a washer onto each screw. Then we can take our screw and run it through each hole on the sides of the bracket. Then we're gonna wanna make sure that our remaining washers line up to the holes here on the side of our light. And the way I like to do that is just by taking the washer and lining it up to the other end of the screw here on our bracket. And now this way, all we have to do left is take our bracket, line up the screws to each side of our light, and then tighten each screw to secure the bracket onto the light. So like I mentioned, having the bracket attached to the light is great because it allows us to angle our light in different positions. But in case we want it completely flush, all we have to do is raise it up, and then we can just use the rubber feet on the bottom of our light to place it on the floor. But of course, if you just want to place the light on the floor so that it's standing up with the feet on the bottom, you don't need to attach the bracket at all. Now, one of the ways we can place our light on the floor is for wall washing. So there's a couple different ways of doing this. So one way is by taking the light and placing it completely flush to your wall. And this way the light will be shining completely upwards against your wall. And the other way we can wall wash is by taking the light and placing it away from your wall and using the bracket to angle your light so that it's hitting the wall the way you want. You can also use these placements with a DJ facade so that it's lighting up your DJ setup. Another way we can place our light is by mounting it to a truss. So while we have the mounting bracket attached to our light, we can take a lighting clamp like our very own LC70. We're gonna take out this bolt here on the clamp, run it through each hole here on our mounting bracket. Now you might need to close a bit of the bracket here like this so that the bolt is peeking through. Then we're gonna take our clamp and screw it back onto the bolt. So now to mount the light onto our truss, we're just gonna loosen this butterfly screw here. Then we can line up the opening of the clamp to a spot on our truss. And once we have it placed the way we want, we're gonna tighten the butterfly screw to secure the light on our truss. Now, any of these placements will work great with your light, but feel free to experiment for what's best for your setup. And while your light is set up in any of these placements, you can use the wireless remote, the controls on the back of your light, or a DMX controller to set your light up with the perfect lighting or effect that you want. So now let's go ahead and turn on our light to see how it works. So up here, you'll see the battery life indicator for your light to see how powered it is. So it's 100% charged right now, but as it gets closer to this red dot here, that means you'll have to take the included power cable and charge your light. There's also this plug here on our light that we can use to electrically daisy chain our lights together. Next, you'll see the DMX out and the DMX in ports, so we can set our light up to a DMX controller or use the master slave feature. Underneath the display here, we have all these different buttons. So we have the mode button to switch the mode that our light is set to. We have the up and down buttons to go through the different options or settings for each mode. And then we have the enter button to save our changes in any of these modes. Now the cool thing is, if I press enter to save this change here, I can turn the light off and turn it back on. It's automatically gonna remember the last save I changed. So now let's go over all the different modes on our light. So starting with the A setting here, this will set our light to the 3-channel DMX mode. And from here, we can switch the DMX address to correspond with our controller. And to do that, all we have to do is use the up and down buttons. And once we have it set to a DMX address, we can press enter to save our setting. Next, we have the D setting here to switch our light to the 6-channel DMX mode. Again, we can use the up and down buttons here to switch the address and enter to save our setting. Next, we have this IR setting here to either turn on or turn off our connection with our wireless remote. So we can use the up or down buttons to turn it on or turn it off. Again, when this is on, we can use the wireless remote, and when it's off, this will cut off the wireless remote. And then we can press enter to save the setting. Next, we have this P setting here that sets the light to a color change mode. In this mode, we can use the up and down buttons to switch the speed here. So the higher it is, the faster the colors will change. Then we can press enter to save the change. The L setting after that is the color fade mode. And again, we can use the up and down buttons to switch the speed of the fade and then enter to save our changes. Next, we have the E setting here, which is the color pulse mode. We can change the speed of the mode by using the up and down buttons and then enter to save. Next, we have the sound mode here where the light will change by my voice. So as you can see, it's changing right now because of the sound being picked up. Even if I clap, it starts to change color. Now the next few modes here allow us to change the red, green, and blue LEDs so that we can set up a custom color. So here I'm in the R or red mode here, and then I can use the up and down buttons to switch how bright I want the red LEDs to come through. Once I have it set the way I want, I can press enter. Then I can press mode again to go to the green menu. Use the up and down buttons to set how much green I want. Then I can press enter. Then I can press mode again to go to the blue menu, set how much blue I want with the up and down settings, and then press enter to save it. And with this custom color, I can go to the next mode, which is the strobe mode. Use the up and down buttons to switch how quickly the light will flash, and then press enter to save it. One thing to keep in mind is that the strobe mode won't work unless you set your light to the color that you want with the remote or with the red, green, and blue selectors on the light itself. Now, another way we can control our lights is with a DMX controller. To set that up, I'm gonna need some DMX cables here. I'm gonna take the male end and plug it into the DMX out of my controller. Then I'm gonna plug the other end into this port here, which is the DMX in for the light. Now the next thing we'll want to do is connect our first light to the second light here. So to do that, I'm going to take another DMX cable, plug the male end into the port on the other side of the light, which is the DMX out port. Then I'm going to take the other end and plug it into the DMX in on our light, which again is this port right here. Now I'm only using 2 lights for our setup today, but if you wanted to set up more lights, you're just going to follow the steps that we used to connect our first light to our second light and do that all the way down your chain. Now the next thing we can do is set the DMX channel mode on our lights, and this is going to determine how much control we have over our lights with our DMX controller. So this all just depends on how much control we want to have. If we only want to control the red, green, and blue LEDs, we can set our light to the 3-channel DMX mode, or if we want to be more advanced, we can set them to the 6-channel DMX mode. So on our light, if we want to set it to the 3-channel DMX mode, we're going to set our light to the A setting here. And if we want to go for 6-channel mode, we're just going to press the mode button again for the D setting. For today's demo, we're going to use the 6-channel DMX mode. So now the next thing we'll want to do is set the DMX address, and for today we'll set it to 001. So now I can go ahead and turn my controller on, activate scanner 1 here on my controller, and now we can go through each fader and see what they do to our lights. So starting with fader 1, this acts as our master dimmer, or how bright we want our lights to be. So for today, let's just set that all the way up. And next we have fader 2 to bring in the red LEDs. So if I raise that a bit, you'll start to see the red coming through. Next we have fader 3 that will bring out the green LEDs, and fader 4 to bring out the blue LEDs. Now we can use all 3 of these faders to set our custom color. So I can raise a little bit of red, a lot of green, and a bit of blue, and now we have the custom color for our lights. Now fader 5 allows us to set our lights to any of the preset modes, and depending on the value or how high we set the fader determines which mode we have our light set to. So what I mean by that is as we raise fader 5, you'll see these numbers come up here, so that's the value that we're setting the fader to. And for example, I'm gonna set it anywhere between 51 to 100 to set it to the color change mode. You can always refer to the DMX guide in your manual to see which values activate which mode. So once we have our light set to a mode, we can go to the next fader, which is fader 6, to control the speed of the mode. So the more I raise it in the color change mode, the faster the colors will change. Now, if you have a wireless DMX controller, you can get these DMX WRE wireless receivers and plug them into your lights so that you have a wireless connection between your controller and your lights. So how it works on our controller is we can go right here where it says wireless and flip that switch on, and this will turn our controller to the wireless DMX mode. Next to that, you'll see this LED and this button underneath that will allow us to switch the wireless DMX signal. Now, the wireless DMX signals are color-coded, which is important because you want them to match between your controller and your receivers in order for the connection to be made. So with this button, I can switch between the wireless DMX signals, and I can pick any color. So for today, let's set it to blue. Then we're going to want to do the same thing on our receivers, but to do that, we might need a tiny screwdriver in order to press the button. So I'm going to use it to turn it on. And then I'm going to use this button here on the side to switch the signal. So again, we'll want to switch it to blue to match with our controller. So when we match the colors on our receivers to our controller, you'll see that it now flashes red on the controller and green on the receivers, letting us know that they're all connected. So now we can take our receivers and plug them into our lights. Next, we're going to want to make sure to set our lights to the same DMX mode and DMX address. Again, we'll use D001 for the 6-channel mode. So now if I raise my faders, you'll see that it starts to interact with our lights. And again, it's completely wireless for a nice, easy setup. And the cool thing is you don't need a receiver for each of your lights in order for it to be wireless. You can take just one of these receivers and plug it into your first light, then connect your first light to the rest of your lights in your chain with DMX cables and have the same effect. Now say you wanted control over multiple lights, but you didn't want to set up a DMX controller, you can always use the master slave function. So to do that, I first need to decide which light I want to have as my master light. So for today, we'll go with this one right here. So next, I'm going to connect my master light to the following light here by using a DMX cable. I'm going to take the male end of the cable and plug it into the DMX out on my master light. Then I'm going to take the other end and plug it into the DMX in on the next light. And if we want to connect more lights in our chain, we'll just take another DMX cable, plug it into the DMX out on the slave light, then plug the other end into the next light, and so on. So now we want to set each light to the same DMX mode between A001 or D001. So for today, let's go with D001. So now I can take the master light and set it to any mode, and then you'll see the other lights in our chain will follow. So this will work no matter what mode or setting you have it set to. So for example, I have it set to sound mode right now, and as you can see, it's starting to change color as it picks up the sound of my voice, and if I clap, you'll see that they both start to change. Now, if your light is far away and you don't want to use the DMX controller or master slave mode, you can also use the wireless remote. Now, because our remote uses IR technology, you can go to the back of your light to the IR mode and make sure that it's set on. So if your remote isn't working with your light, this could be set to the off position. And if that's the case, you're just going to use the up and down buttons to turn it on. And you can even press enter to save the change. Also, IR technology is very line of sight, so you're always going to want to make sure that your remote is facing directly towards your light in order for it to change. So this is something to keep in mind, especially if you have multiple lights set up. Again, you'll just want to take your remote and point it to the light in order for it to change. So let's go over each of the buttons here on the remote. So over here we have the on and off buttons. So we can use these buttons to quickly turn the bulbs of the light on or off. Keep in mind though, this won't turn the light off completely. You'll have to go to the back to turn it off or on. Next, we have the brightness buttons here to control how bright our lights are. Underneath that, we have the buttons to switch our light to the base colors of red, green, blue, and white. And underneath that, we have all of the custom colors we can set our light to. Then we have all of the different modes we can set our light to. So we have the flash mode, the strobe mode, the fade mode, and the sound mode. And while we have the light set to any of these modes, we can use the brightness buttons to adjust the speed of the mode. So for example, while we're in the flash mode, I can bring the speed up with the up button, and then I can use the down button to slow it down. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your battery Par 50 rechargeable power wash light. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.